All right, so we're in the meat section of H-E-B. When you think about steak, what comes to mind is New York strip, ribeye, or T-bone. But what about flat iron steak? This steak is cut from the same section of the cow that top blade steak comes from, only that it's cut in a much different way. It's the second most tender steak next to filet mignon, with a big, bold, beefy flavor like New York strip, but much more tender. This is basically a new steak cut that's only been around the last few decades, but steak lovers love it for its fantastic marbling and texture. So if you're one of those people that like to know where your beef cuts or steak cuts come from, then stick around to learn how you can cut your own, right here on Al Luna Cueing. Welcome back, my good people. Great to see you all again. So what we have here is a top blade roast that I got from my local H-E-B. So what exactly is flat iron and what gives it unique flavors and tenderness? Well, to begin with, it comes from the chuck shoulder primal, also known as the beef shoulder clod. Historically, beef clod along with beef brisket is the foundation of Central Texas style barbecue, as epitomized by Crike's Market in Lockhart, Texas, where shoulder clod has been prepared and cooked since the early 1900s. This cut consists of 5 distinct muscles, 3 of which are fabricated into top blade, shoulder center, and shoulder tender. The remaining 2 are generally used for ground beef or stew meat. Today we'll be cutting flat iron steaks from this top blade roast. This roast is usually cut vertically into top blade steaks, but people usually shy away from this cut of beef because it has a gristle running straight down the center of the steak that makes it tough. However, with a little bit of knife skill and patience, you can cut the roast horizontally and remove most of the gristle and sinew that runs down the center of the roast. So that will produce 2 long fillets that we can then cut into flat iron steak. Now, a quick little disclaimer, I'm not a butcher, or do I claim to be one. I'm just a backyard barbecuer that drinks beer, watches a lot of videos, and likes to try new things. So I thought it would be cool buying a top blade roast, breaking it down, and sharing what I learned from it with you all by doing a video. Now, if you're going to want to try this at home, remember that you're going to have to request this cut from a butcher, because you won't find this whole cut of meat out with the packaged meat. So now that we have the roast out from its packaging, let's take a look at what we're dealing with here. Now, there's a thinner end on the left side, then we have this fat cap that runs all the way across the top of the roast. We also have some silver skin on the bottom that we'll deal with our knife, and there's also a thick fibrous sinew that runs through the center of the roast, as well as patches of sinew in various sections of the roast. The difficulty of harvesting the steak cut away from all the sinew is the reason why this cut wasn't discovered and recognized as a steak cut until 2002. So let's get started. The first thing is to remove this fat cap. So you can start by using your hands to peel away some of this fat, then use a boning knife to work your way under it. You can see that underneath this fat cap is some silver skin that we'll deal with afterwards. So once again, we'll try to peel away the fat with our hands on the other side, then we'll use our knife to continue the job. We'll repeat this until we have all the fat cap removed. Once we have the fat cap removed, we start to work on our silver skin. We place our boning knife underneath the skin and slightly angle our knife up so that we only remove the skin and as little meat as possible. As we remove most of the silver skin in big pieces, there will be bits and pieces of silver skin that you will have to come back to. But that's okay. Just take your time and you'll begin to see the great marbling this cut has. Now, the thicker end of the roast usually has this sinew you can't work around, so just cut off that end. This will also give you a better visual of where to start cutting along the center sinew when we're ready to. A couple more pieces of silver skin to get rid of, and then we'll be ready to cut our fillets. So we'll go a little faster on the last part of the silver skin. Now, I don't know what it is, but there's something satisfying about seeing meat getting trimmed down. So here's a part worth noting. There will be some gristle on the side of the cut that there's no workaround, and you will have to cut some meat with it. But just remember to save those parts for a grind. And so here it is, we finally deal with the center sinew that runs through the roast. I first try to open it with my hands, then use my knife, only to fail. The knife moved upward and I cut a piece of the front. But that's okay, I'll remove some of the sinew later and use it as a small piece of steak. And so now I take a second look and I'm thinking maybe drinking beer would have made this easier. But here we go, second attempt. And with that second attempt, I removed another 1/3 of the fillet. And now we'll just clean up some of that sinew and we'll have ourselves another little steak. And so that's steak number 2 if we decide to keep the first one. So let's continue on. And so I try to guide my knife through that edge of the silver skin, and there comes number 3. Much easier than the previous 2. Now just clean it up and we'll have ourselves our 3 steaks from one side. On second thought, maybe I'll cut this one in half and we'll square them up. And there it is, 3 keepers for sure. We'll decide on the first one later and take a look at that marbling. Okay, so let's get our scraps organized and let's take a last whack at this other side. We'll fast forward through this one as well, and as you can see, this is a very fibrous, tough piece of sinew that goes through the center of this roast. And I'll slow down right here so you can see how tough it is. You can tug that thing. And so the last remaining part is just take off that remaining sinew and silver skin and then finally cut them into steaks. I'll fast forward to that part since you've already seen the process of removing these bits of sinew. And there it is, our flat iron fillet. We'll just square this up a little. Ideally, with a little practice, you want to be able to remove 2 fillets like this from the roast. So now let's cut them into 3 separate steaks, and then I'll let you see the marbling on both sides of each steak. Now keep in mind that this was a select grade roast, but yet there's still some great marbling on most of these steaks. So here's a breakdown of all the roasts. We have the sinew scrap for the dogs, the trimmings with beef that we'll grind into ground beef, and our 7 steaks. Okay guys, so in the end we were left with these steaks that we went ahead and vacuum sealed. 2 steaks in each. You can see the nice marbling. So 2, 4, 6, and then 1 in here. So we have 7 steaks. And then we have about 1 pound of meat that we can grind. And then I put a little bit of fat in there so we can make like an 80-20 grind, and then the rest is silver skin. So there it is, folks, my first breakdown of Top Blade roast. Now, although this was a fun experience, I think it would only be worth it if you find Top Blade roast cheaper than I did. I did look at single cuts of flat iron at my local Walmart, but of choice grade, and they were running about $11.84 a pound, with the average steak costing about $7.50. I yielded 7 steaks from my roast, which would be $52.50 at this price, compared to the $46.21 of select grade that we broke down. Still, I did get 1 pound of ground beef and dog food scraps aside from the steaks. Oh, and those steaks, they were fantastic. Super tender, full of flavor, and these steaks swell when you cook them. You can even cook them to medium well like I did, and they remain super juicy. Just look at how juicy it was. Well, guys, that's it for this one. I hope you guys and gals enjoyed this one. We'll have more beef cut breakdowns in the future. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe if you haven't already. Hope to see you guys and gals again very soon.